At my brother's wedding, they said every name, except mine. The photographer even skipped me in the group shots, but I stayed, quiet, until the moment a decorated soldier walked through the doors, looking for me. Not Nick, not my father, me. And when he raised his hand in salute, suddenly silence had weight. And my name? It echoed louder than any toast they gave that night. I didn't come for drama. I came because I was invited, sort of. My name wasn't on the program, not under family of the groom, not even as sister of Chase Ward. Instead, a printed card just said, guest +1, and that was generous. I walked into the church alone, Colorado Springs in late autumn, cold air, polished wood floors, and that faint smell of dried flowers and wedding nerves. The kind of place my parents loved to book. Traditional, expensive, filled with just enough gold trim to impress whoever they're trying to impress that year. My heels echoed faintly down the aisle. I wasn't late. I'm never late. That's what training does. It teaches you to move before the world expects you to. I passed people who barely looked up, friends of Chase, classmates from law school, distant aunts who always asked me if I was still traveling for work. I nodded politely, slipped into a pew at the very back. My seat, unassigned, unspoken, was near the fire exit, where the flower arrangements didn't quite reach and the heating didn't either. No one noticed I was there, no one wanted to. Aunt Lydia walked by with a wine-colored shawl and a glass of something too early for the time of day. She did a double take, squinted, and said, "Oh, you're one of the cousins, right, on Diana's side?" I smiled, something like that. She walked on without waiting for an answer. I looked down at the small card clutched in my hand. A generic seating slip, no table number. I folded it once, then again, until it disappeared into my palm. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Crisp violins, white roses, tears in the right places. Chase looked sharp, just like always. The perfect ward child, the one who stayed, the one who made everyone proud. And when the officiant said his name, the entire room beamed like they were personally responsible for raising him. But no one said my name. Not once. Not in the welcome speeches, not in the pastor's acknowledgments, not in the slideshow montage they played while guests transitioned from the ceremony to the reception hall. The family tree was trimmed, apparently, and I'd been pruned. I sat in the shadows, heels crossed at the ankle, hands in my lap like a ghost with good posture. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I didn't come just to watch Chase walk down the aisle. I came because I'd been waiting, not for revenge, not for recognition, just for a moment, the right moment. And that moment was coming. They'd all spent so much energy erasing me, painting this perfect family picture without my presence, without my name, without my story. But what they forgot is that stories don't go away just because you skip a page. That morning, I put on a slate blue dress, simple, clean lines, no makeup, hair tied back in a low twist. I looked like nobody. That was the plan. I wanted to see how far they'd go pretending I wasn't there. And they didn't disappoint. They never do. But weddings are funny things. They start with perfection, pomp, and carefully chosen words. And then, if you're lucky, they get interrupted. They say you never forget the moment someone breaks you. But what they don't tell you is, sometimes it's not an explosion. Sometimes it's a whisper, a shrug, a dinner where nobody looks up. The night before I left for the military academy, my mom made roast chicken. That's how I remember it. Not the speech I had prepared, not the pristine folder I had printed with my acceptance letter, or even the uniform brochure I brought home like it was proof I belonged somewhere. No, I remember the smell of rosemary and lemon and the sound of my dad's fork scratching the plate. I sat across from him, spine straight, hair pulled back, wearing a pressed navy blouse that made me look older than my 17 years. I'd shaved 15 seconds off my mile, memorized every code of conduct in that welcome packet. I'd earned my way into the academy fair and square. I was proud. And I thought, for a moment, that maybe he would be too. "I got in," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Westward Military Academy, early placement." He didn't look up, just picked at the skin on his chicken thigh and poured himself a second bourbon. "It's a political thing now," he finally said. "They're letting more girls in. Diversity. Quotas." I blinked. "It wasn't a quota, Dad. I passed the entrance eval. Scored higher than—" "Don't embarrass yourself," he cut in, sharper this time. "You're book smart, sure. You've always been orderly. But field work? Combat? Come on, Alexis. You cry when the weather turns too fast." I stared at him, not angry, not yet, just stunned. He didn't even meet my eyes when he said it, just swirled the amber in his glass and leaned back like he was bored. "You're not built for it," he added. "Maybe logistics, communications, but command? Leave that to Chase." That was the moment something inside me folded, quietly, like linen. And it didn't scream, it didn't even shake. It just stopped hoping. That night, I packed alone. My duffel was heavier than it should have been. I tied my boots by myself. My mother hovered near the stairs, murmuring something about remembering to write, but never made it to the door. No family photo, no good luck charm, just silence. The cab came early. I loaded my bag into the trunk, climbed in, and didn't look back until we turned onto Ridgewood Drive. Through the rear window, I watched our porch light fade. That house was always cold, but that morning it felt frozen. It took years to thaw what he said. Long nights in bunk rooms where I tried to drown his voice out with repetition and mud and bruises. And the thing is, he was partly right. The field was brutal. I broke 2 fingers in my first week of training and wrapped them myself. I puked during midnight PT drills and ran again 10 minutes later. But I didn't quit, not once. Because every step, every blister, every insult spat inches from my face by a superior felt quieter than my father's words. And that silence? I filled it with something else. Grit. They say the strongest soldiers are built, not born. I say, some are built in kitchens across from fathers who mistake dismissal for love. And that empty seat at the kitchen table? That was the last time I ever asked for one. I should have known not to watch the slideshow. I'd already been left off the program. They sat me near the kitchen exit like an extra fork at a table that didn't need one. But still, I sat through it, like some part of me hadn't completely given up on being seen. The lights dimmed, piano music floated through the room, something soft and sentimental. The screen lit up, and there he was, Chase, my baby brother. A montage of his life from infancy to engagement, like a movie trailer made by parents who believed in sequels but forgot the first film existed. There were baby bath photos, little league clips, his graduation from Cornell, his bar exam celebration, slide after slide of curated moments. He looked good, he always did, clean-cut, confident, safe. Then I saw it. A photo flashed across the screen. Chase, age 10, clinging to the lowest branch of the oak tree in our backyard, grinning. I knew that photo. I remembered it because I was the one who boosted him up. That day, I had been standing behind him, hands under his sneakers, laughing, sweat on my brow, helping him reach that first branch. It was one of the few afternoons we weren't fighting, one of the last times we felt like siblings. But in the version on the screen, I wasn't there. The frame had been cropped, tight, just Chase in a tree, like he'd levitated into it himself. A beat passed, no one blinked, no one noticed the lie but me. I felt my throat tighten. It wasn't an oversight, it was a choice. They hadn't just stopped saying my name, they'd erased my face. And in that moment, I knew something I hadn't let myself admit until then. They didn't just forget about me. They didn't want me in the picture. The slideshow rolled on, but I barely saw the rest. I could hear applause, polite chuckles, whispers of "so cute," and "look at him there." But the sound faded. I was already elsewhere, not physically, but deep inside, somewhere colder, more familiar. It's strange. You expect betrayal to feel like fire, like a slap or a scream. But this? This was a whisper, printed and projected and clapped for. I folded my napkin, fingers trembling, and stared at my lap. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because the tears felt too generous, too familiar. I'd cried already, years ago, when my letters from boot camp went unanswered, when my birthday passed with a generic e-card, when Mom said, "We didn't want to bother you while you were deployed." And somewhere between omission and apathy, they'd rewritten the family story, one slide at a time. The crowd began clapping again. I forced a smile as the lights returned. Then I heard it. A low hum, not music, not conversation, not anything inside. It came from outside, faint at first, like a memory, then louder. A sound I knew down to the bones in my boots. Rotor blades. There was a helicopter approaching. It wasn't military grade, not a Chinook or a Black Hawk, but a light tactical bird, private contract, fast, agile, familiar. I glanced toward the back entrance of the church, heartbeat steady. No one else noticed it yet. They were too busy raising glasses, making toasts, feeding each other overpriced hors d'oeuvres and lies. But I heard it. And I knew. This night, this whole carefully choreographed, curated night, was about to get rewritten. And this time, they wouldn't be the editors. It started with a silence I didn't trust. The kind that lands too perfectly after a toast. Where champagne flutes clink, but conversations stutter. Where the music lowers, but no one told the band to stop. And then came the knock. 3 soft raps against the rear entrance of the reception hall. Not the main doors, not where the bride and groom entered under a canopy of flowers and approval, but the service entrance near the kitchen, the one closest to my table. The one I hadn't taken my eyes off since I heard the helicopter. The event coordinator scurried past me, heels clicking like panic. She opened the door just enough to whisper, and then froze. Standing there, crisp in full dress uniform, was Lieutenant Commander Sarah Lang, former SRG Recon, Navy Cross recipient, and, for 2 tours, my second in command. I hadn't seen her in 3 years. She nodded once to the coordinator, handed over a folded folder sealed in black wax, and walked inside like she owned the place. Conversations halted. Forks stopped midair. The band trailed off into confusion as Lang moved up the aisle, between linen-draped tables and open mouths, toward the stage. My mother turned in her seat, her face tight with a kind of forced amusement. Like maybe this was a prank, or worse, a scheduling mistake. My father stood slightly, confused, watching this officer as if trying to decode her purpose. Lang never looked at them. She went straight to the MC, leaned in, and whispered something. He blinked, adjusted his mic, cleared his throat like a man who'd just been told gravity had reversed. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, eyes darting to the crowd. Before our next toast, we've been asked to pause for a brief recognition ceremony. You could feel the air shift. Someone very important is in attendance tonight, and this moment was requested by the Department of Defense, who asked that it be delivered quietly and with dignity. He opened the folder, swallowed. This guest led a covert rescue operation under hostile fire in northern Omia last year, saving the lives of 28 service members and 2 embedded civilian diplomats. Her mission, known as Operation Frost Echo, was classified until recently. My heart beat steady in my chest. He looked up. Chief Operations Officer Alexis Ward, will you please stand? It was like time cracked open. Chairs creaked. Necks turned. A glass slipped from someone's hand 2 tables over and shattered on the floor. I stood. Slowly, without rush, without flinching. For the first time that night, maybe in years, every eye in that room was locked on me. Some with shock, some with shame, some with the kind of disbelief that doesn't just question the moment, it questions everything that came before it. Lang reached into her coat, pulled out a velvet box, and opened it with care. This recognition was intended for a private ceremony at Fort Redstone, she said, loud and clear. But Officer Ward declined the spotlight, the Pentagon insisted, so we brought the ceremony to her. She turned the box toward me. Inside, the Legion of Merit, awarded for exceptionally meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding services and achievements. Lang pinned it just above my heart. The metal was cool against my skin, and in that moment I could feel it. Not the weight of the silver, but the weight leaving my chest. She stepped back, clicked her heels together, and gave me a perfect salute. Ma'am, she said, it's an honor. Then, without turning to the crowd, she stepped aside. I turned toward the room, not in defiance, but in acknowledgement. Let them look. Let them finally see. I had worn combat boots through terrain that would break a man's soul. I had held the line when everything else fell apart. And now I stood in heels, metal gleaming, in the very room where they tried to erase me. And not a single person could look through me anymore. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. After Lang pinned the Legion of Merit to my dress, the applause didn't come. Not right away, not the polite tap-tap kind you hear after a father's speech or a choreographed first dance. No, this was the kind of silence that thuds, that sits heavy, that makes you aware of every breath you take because it's the only sound left. They stared at me like I had done something impossible, like I'd walked on stage and spoken a different language, one they all should have understood but never bothered to learn. And in a way I had. I spoke in call signs and scars, in evacuation maps and chain of command. My body had memorized drills they couldn't pronounce. My fingers had tied off wounds no one in this room would ever see. My name, the one they left out of the program, had been etched on mission briefings, stitched into uniforms, carried through storm zones. And now, it had just been spoken, aloud, in full rank and title, to a room of people who'd only ever known me as the quiet one, the difficult one, the you should smile more one. Lang gave one final salute, then nodded at me and made her exit, heels clicking against the marble like punctuation. And when the doors closed behind her, I finally turned to face the room, to look directly at the people who had refused to look at me for years. First, my mother. She sat frozen, napkin twisted between her fingers, lips pressed so tightly I couldn't tell if she was trying not to cry or not to speak. Her mascara had smudged slightly, maybe from shock, maybe from recognition, but not from pride. Not yet. Then my eyes met my father's. He was standing now, still in his tailored navy blazer, still trying to appear composed. His mouth opened slightly, like a man about to give a speech, the kind he's practiced but never earned the right to say. And then nothing. No, I'm proud of you. No, I was wrong. Not even a nod. He just looked at me like a man watching a stranger take his place at the head of a table he thought he built. The power didn't shift because I stood taller. It shifted because, for the first time in my life, they realized I'd never needed them to hold space for me. I had made my own. I took a breath, deep and grounding, and returned to my seat. Yes, that seat. The one near the kitchen door. The one they gave me like an afterthought. Only this time, when I sat down, no one mistook me for a caterer's +1. Eyes followed me, some with admiration, some with discomfort, and all I could think was, let them sit with that. Let them sit with the mistake of leaving me out, not with rage, not with vengeance, but with the quiet, brutal consequence of being wrong. The slideshow had skipped me. The seating chart had missed me. The speeches had erased me. But the truth? It walked through that door in full uniform and pinned itself to my chest. I stepped outside just after the cake was cut. The air was cooler now, sharp with mountain wind and the distant scent of pine. The buzz of the reception faded behind me, the music, the glasses clinking, the forced laughter trying too hard to reset the room. I walked past the hedges, heels clicking softly against the stone, past the tented bar and the patio lights strung like fairy tales no one believed anymore. I just needed a moment, not to cry, not to breathe, just to be. That's when I heard them. Their voices, low, tense, just around the corner near the rose trellis. I should have kept walking, but I didn't. My father's voice came first, calm, measured, like he was negotiating a ceasefire with himself. She could have told us. A pause. Then my mother. Walter, come on. How would she tell us anything? You barely looked at her. His breath caught, barely audible. We weren't against her. We just didn't think she'd make it that far. I didn't move, didn't flinch. But inside, something cracked, not a scream, not a sob. A quiet, definitive snap. The kind that happens when you finally stop giving someone the benefit of the doubt. Didn't think she'd make it that far. Like I had stumbled into valor by accident. Like surviving war zones, leading operations, saving lives. Like all of it was luck. Like I had proved them wrong by mistake. I had spent years carrying that hope, that maybe someday he'd say the thing I needed to hear. Not loudly. Just once. I was wrong. Or even I'm proud. But standing there in the shadows, listening to him talk about me like a project that failed upward, I realized something I hadn't been ready to face until now. He wasn't sorry. Not really. He was just surprised. And honestly, that hurt less than I expected. Because somewhere between the academy and Afghanistan, I had stopped needing him to see me. Stopped twisting myself into something recognizable just so he'd nod. The version of me who needed that apology? She didn't live here anymore. I turned quietly and walked back toward the path, the light from the reception glowing softer now. The metal brushed against my ribs with each step. Solid, real. Not for show, not for him. I'd been chasing his voice for years. But that night I found my own. When I stepped back inside, Chase was laughing near the dessert table, flanked by his new in-laws. He caught my eye, gave a small nod. Not the dismissive kind, not the surprised kind, just a real one, like for once he saw it. I returned it. No words exchanged, none needed. The DJ was asking people to gather for the bouquet toss. I walked right past. No one stopped me. No one dared. And as I crossed the room, full of chatter, clatter, champagne, no one looked through me anymore. I wasn't the sister who left. I was the woman who returned. I didn't wait for a final toast. Didn't linger for the bouquet toss or the awkward uncle speeches or the let's take one big family photo where I'd be asked to step aside. Again. No one stopped me as I walked to the coat check. I wasn't hiding, but I wasn't announcing either. I'd already done that, not with words, but with presence. I slipped my blazer back on, smoothing the fabric. The metal was still pinned to my chest. I could have taken it off, could have tucked it away, but I didn't. It didn't feel like armor anymore. It felt like truth. As I stepped out the side entrance into the cool night air, I looked up. The stars above Colorado Springs were clear, scattered like old stories, the ones I used to think I didn't belong in. The soft whir of rotors returned. There she was. The same lightweight tactical bird from earlier, parked just beyond the gravel lot, discreet, efficient, waiting. Lang was already there, standing near the open side door, arms crossed. She raised her chin when she saw me. No salute this time, just understanding. "You sure you're ready to go?" she asked, her voice cutting through the dark like a gentle order. I looked back once. The reception hall glowed behind the trees, golden, warm, full of sound. My mother was probably still sipping wine in the corner, trying to look unfazed. My father would be pretending to scroll through something on his phone, retreating into the safe logic of silence. Chase? He might be on the dance floor trying to laugh through the crack in the evening. But none of them followed me, and that, oddly, was the gift. I didn't need them to chase me. I just needed to know I could leave and still be whole. I climbed into the chopper. Lang helped me with the harness, just like she had 100 times before. I sat back, letting the vibration of the machine hum through me, familiar, grounding. As we lifted, I looked down one last time. Not with longing, not with grief, just perspective. The place that once made me feel invisible now looked small. A cluster of lights trying too hard to prove something. But me? I didn't need the lights anymore. I had built my own glow. As we gained altitude, Lang leaned over the comms and said, "You know, I've never seen you that still in a room full of people." I smiled. "It's easier when they can't unsee you." She laughed. "You always had that in you. They just didn't want to believe it." I turned my head toward the window. "I used to think they had to believe it for it to count," I said. "But they're not the ones pinning medals. They're not the ones bleeding for missions. They're not the ones writing my story." We flew east toward the horizon, toward whatever came next. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless. Not because I'd escaped something, but because I'd released something. Their approval, their version of me, their silence. I didn't need to be a part of their picture anymore. I'd become the whole damn frame. Sometimes the loudest victories don't come with fireworks. They come in silence, in the choice to walk away, in the strength to stand alone, and in the power to no longer need the applause you once begged for. If you've ever felt invisible in a room you should have belonged to, if your story was edited out, if your voice was treated like background noise, remember this: your worth isn't defined by who chooses to see you. It's defined by who you become when they don't. And maybe, just maybe, the moment they finally turn around is the same moment you've already moved on. If this story resonated with you, share it, or better yet, share your own. Because here on Sweet Revenge, Happy Ending, we believe your silence doesn't mean defeat. It means you're preparing for the moment they'll never forget.